Hidden parts. Regardless of your dishwasher's make or model, replacing just a couple of these can make a huge difference. Most secret parts are similar in form and function to what I'm going to show you here today, and they're easy to fix. So if your dishwasher's not performing up to snuff, and you tried the basic interior tune-up techniques I showed you in my other video, it's at the link below, by the way, and it's a good place to start. But today, I'm going to show you how to get these parts working up to peak performance again, or replace each and every one of them if necessary, for a fraction of what it would cost you to buy a new machine. I'm wearing 6 pair of gloves, 14 pair of safety goggles, and some flesh-colored Kevlar to satisfy the legal department. The mill's behind the camera. Let's get started. The tools I use are no big deal. I found every single one of them on Helen's bedside table. 1/4-inch nut driver, 5/16" nut driver, 2 adjustable screwdrivers, which if you have the right kind can actually save you from buying these. More on that later. And a 5/8" wrench. Now, in case you didn't notice, the dishwasher's been flipped onto its back. I've also disconnected the power from the unit and the water supply. There's a few tricks to doing that, so if you're interested, be sure to watch my full-length dishwasher video, which I've submitted for a Nobel Prize. There's a link in the description below. Yeah, I was bored today, so I figured I'd rip out all these parts and put them back together. But first, let's compare the cost of that to buying a new $700, $800, $900 machine. Let's say you replaced everything that's important in the underbelly of this here box that washes your dishes. You got the sump, that's about $20. You got the complete recirculating pump and motor assembly, that's $110. That brings you up to about $130. You got the turbidity device that brings you up to about $160. That's about $30. You got this here drainage pump and motor. You can get that whole assembly for about $50. That brings you up to $210. And then you got this here solenoid valve for $30. It brings you up to $240. Let's call it $250 just to be on the safe side. For a do-it-yourself legend like me, that is an easy decision. $250 as opposed to $800, $1,000, $1,200, and that's if you have to replace everything. So let's get right to it with some specifics I'm sure you can relate to. See, when I got back from fixing Margie's Mustang, Helen was belly aching this dishwasher wasn't draining right, and I proposed what I felt was a thoughtful alternative, whereby she could siphon the dirty water by sucking it through a garden hose. Helen, let me run something past you. After I got out of intensive care, I ruminated on the predicament, and I thought I'd go for a more win-win solution. After checking for clogs and blockages inside the strainer and sump, which, by the way, looked like it was on its last leg ready for replacement, which I'm going to do later, but there wasn't any blockages. Well, that's when I knew. I'd better examine the drain pump itself. Turned out the pump didn't need to be replaced, but there was something inside of it clogging this impeller shaft. I found this piece of glass from a Jose Cuervo shot Helen chucked at me that night she was hosting Bible study. Them church ladies are crazy. So let me show you how I opened everything up to check it. There's my drainage pump, and the wiring connections just snap off, so I'm going to pop them off real easy off of that pump. Motor, actually. You can tell it's a motor because it's got magnets here, all right? That makes the motor spin. So those are disconnected, and I want to point out that there are 2 wire leads that feed down between here, so they can conveniently reach the heating element connections below. We're going to take a 1/4-inch nut driver, or you could also use my adjustable screwdriver trick where you remove the attachment and it functions like a nut driver. Which brings us to Merv serve tip number 17. Take the bit out of one of these reversible screwdrivers, which most people have around the house, and you've got a nut driver, which makes it easy to remove most of the little mounting screws you'll need to. And if you're wondering, in an upcoming video, I will show you how I test the drainage pump motor as well as other things, which is why I'm going to loosen up every one of these clamps, because they all got the same size nuts, and in a minute I'm going to show you how to replace each and every part under here. There's your turbidity sensor, $20 or $30 miracle. And we're going to get under here and remove the clamp that holds the drainage hose, and once it's loose, take off the hose. A little water might come out, don't freak out. And once you have it off, we're going to use the 1/4-inch nut driver to remove the screws that hold the drain pump to the frame. I'm going to remove the drainage pump assembly. And I'm going to save this for the new sump, which I'm going to be showing you how to attach later. If that's not your situation, you could leave it on there for when you reattach your drainage pump assembly. And I'm going to leave those right there for when it's time to reattach the pump assembly. Just don't forget about them. And up inside this shaft here is your impeller. There's a flapper valve here, and a lot of people sometimes forget there's a flapper valve here. And there's actually 2 flapper valves on this drainage assembly. I'm going to pry this out so you can see. These are $7 items. These are really inexpensive, and over the years what happens is they get filthy, they get clogged, they get old and worn out. It's rubber and it stops doing its job. The job of these flappers is to keep dirty water from backflowing into your dishwasher, and you don't want that to happen, so while I'm at it, I'm going to replace my flapper valves and make sure we always have the cleanest of water in this machine. Now that I've opened the drainage pump, I'm going to take a good look inside, and sure enough, there's that piece of glass. I don't know if you can see that. It's keeping the impeller from spinning. That's why the dishwasher wasn't draining right. Real quick, I'm going to show you about replacing these flapper valves. And here's a new one that I bought, $7. And it's listed with those product links in the description below the video, of course. And you're going to just pry out the old one. I think anybody can figure this out. But notice that the out is going to go on top there. Look at all the gunk. Look at all this crusty crud from over the years. Calcium deposits and old soap, stuff like that it's covered with. I'm going to scrape that off real good. Might want to wash it, some soap and water. And installing the new flapper valve is really a piece of cake. I'm not going to waste your time showing you how to do it on both of them, but it's very obvious. It goes back in place. There's 2 notches here that come down between these 2 openings, and it can only go one way, really, folks. You'll figure it out. I'm not going to waste your time showing you how to do the other one, too, because it's the same process. It's the exact same process. Going to put that back in place. It's like a little puzzle piece. Just snaps right back in. And so you see how the flapper valve works now. Water can go out of your machine, but it can't flow back in to infect your dishes with dirty water. And with that valuable yet simple step behind us, your dishwasher's already on the road to performing better. But the secret stuff I'm going to show you next is worth its weight in gold. So reinstalling the drainage pump motor is just reversing the process. Gonna first start with those mounting screws on the bracket. The wires that clip back onto the motor itself. And tighten up the clamp that leads to the sump. Of course, the exhaust hose for your drain, and then you'd be done. Or would you now? Hold on a minute. You forgot something, friend. The connections to your heating elements need to be reattached. And then, and only then, you'd be done with your drainage pump assembly. But stick with me here, because I'm going to disassemble the sump, the motor, and I'm going to keep working my way through all these parts. So remember, if your scenario is you're taking off the sump, you got to detach this turbidity sensor. Keep in mind it monitors the cleanliness of your water and dictates the cycles of your machine by communicating to the computer through these clip-on electrical wires here. Like I showed you before, it's attached to the sump with a simple clamp, which I'm going to save and attach to my new sump when I install it. Every one of these clip-on electrical connections, like this one connected to your solenoid valve, provide a way for the main brain of your machine to tell these components when to turn on or off. So the sump is at the center of all your water flow activity. Both pumps are connected to it. Drainage pump assembly would be over here on the left there, where we just got done replacing it as an illustration. And this is where you would take your 5/16 inch nut driver, or your handy dandy, if you recall, and loosen up the clamp which attaches the sump to the recirculation assembly. That's the impeller plus the motor. And having done just that much, you see the sump is flexible enough where you could just about wiggle it out of there. Now in my case, I'm replacing the motor. So I'm going to take off this electrical connector, and even though I ain't no electrician, I'm not intimidated by these simple connections, because each one of them's unique. I mean, it's obvious where each one clips back onto. The trick is, just don't forget about them. Yeah, I'm going to loosen up this here hanging bracket that holds onto the motor. If a person was just replacing the sump, by the way, they could probably get away with just loosening that bottom clamp and wrangling the rubber sump out of its bracket. But I'm replacing the motor, so I might as well do all of this. And we're going to shimmy that right out of there. You do have another clamp back here. I almost forgot, folks, because I don't have to remove that clamp. You'll see why here in a minute. You may need to if you haven't loosened up anything inside of your machine, and this would be the place where you do that so you can free up your recirculation pump assembly from this rubber fitting. The light bulb will go on for you here, folks, when I show you why it's an option for me. So now with connections removed and the hanger bracket and the clamps removed, I should be able to shimmy her free. And she's out. Now I want to point something out here, folks. Earlier I had disconnected this here wash arm retainer nut so I could get some things out of the way and take a real good look down inside my sump area for any water flow obstructions. Well, had I not removed this wash arm retainer nut, this part, this rubbery cylindrical part of the recirculation pump, would have been stuck up inside your machine, because it would be threaded together with this wash arm retainer nut, which holds it in place up in there. If that was the case, you'd have to loosen this metal clamp like I was showing you to release your circulation pump. Since mine wasn't cinched up into the machine, I just left it attached to the recirculation pump and pulled them both out together like one solid piece. You see? So let's get this out of the way because we're going to need that for the new sump. And let's remove the bracket that holds the sump in place. 2 screws on the top, and trust me, there's 2 on the bottom. You don't need to see them. Ain't no big deal. $6 million man. Check out my superhuman strength. And then you're just going to pull the sump out of the fitting. And look at that. That shows you what dishwasher detergent does, folks. Lots of buildup in there. This is where I try to patch that busted up pipe on the top. Now look at the difference. This is the old one, and here's the new one. Brand new, soft, and flexible, including that nice stem at the top, which, trust me, is going to be the first thing to go. So we're just going to reverse the process with the sump and the motor. Everything goes back in place in the reverse order that you took it out. The sump is a nice snug fit. You just want to push her into place all the way around. Put your holding bracket back in place. Remember both sides, of course. Put the clamp back on and reinstall the turbidity sensor. Goes in the notch there. Fits right in. Tighten the clamp real good so she don't leak, but don't crush her. You're going to put your clamps back in place on the other parts of your sump, and inside here, use some soap or water, dare I say, spit, around these connecting points so things can slip back into place good. And the recirculation assembly goes back in. Make sure she's fully engaged at all points of contact. Now reattaching that top hanging bracket helps hold her in place. Clip the wire back on so she can take orders from the main brain. Lubricate the drainage pump assembly, reattach it back to the rubber sump. Feed them wires back down through so they can reach the heating elements real good. Tighten the screws to the mounting bracket. Reattach the electrical connections, and that includes your heating elements. Tighten up all remaining clamps like the one on your drainage hose, and don't forget about that one back behind your recirculation pump assembly if that's your situation. And that's the essence of every major part that would need to be replaced on a machine. Of course, there are some nuances about connecting back up the power and the water supply and getting her leveled back up under your cabinetry, but I cover those in my full-length video, and I do hope you'll watch it. It'll be in the description below. I hope this satisfied your curiosity. It's actually easier and more gratifying than you might think. Sometimes I just do it at 2 in the morning when I can't sleep. Well, this is Merv, and I'll see you next time. You know, we've developed a bunch of helpful dishwasher videos. Browse through the playlists on our channel, or just search for Merv Serve Dishwasher or other videos. We got something for everybody, so be sure to like and share.